like a permanently vigilant, incorruptible system? He said, no. Corruption is what was the word? A perennial thing. It just keeps growing and growing and growing all year round, and you just have to keep cutting it back. You know, your garden doesn't stay weed-free because you sit on your ass and do nothing, does it?
No, exactly. We talk about this all the time. You know, you can't a system, especially as corrupt as the United States system, cannot be fixed. I mean, even Walter Burien and all his efforts, and we're going to be trying to really, really put those efforts into fruition here pretty soon. Even his efforts are only as good as taking the corruption and controlling it. I mean, that's really what he is trying to do, is literally to acknowledge the corruption, first of all, because no one wants to acknowledge it. Secondly, harness it, pass laws that say corruption is actually wrong and evil and will be punished, which we don't have at the moment because everything seems to be legal. All he's doing is actually really harnessing the corruption to try to get the people to finally benefit from their own taxpayer money that they spend. Right now, there is no benefit. There is no tax benefit. I mean, it's just the bare minimum. You know, people are starving on the streets. So the concept of fixing an already corrupt system, to me, is a ridiculous one as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like when your computer's kind of frozen, you don't sit there and wait for it to unfreeze. You hit the reset button, don't you?
Sure. Yeah. Just it's kind of what the Declaration of Independence alludes to, which is to abolish that government. But
well, the people have the rights to throw off such government, whether violently or otherwise. And this is the thing. How many rules do you think the elite are going to follow? What lengths do you think it is to which they will not go in order to enslave and exterminate everybody? The answer is obviously none. There's a realization that I had is that the measurement of how good somebody is the extent to which they will restrain themselves. And the measurement by which you can measure evil is how little they restrain themselves.
Well, yeah, good point. When the, I mean, I guess, to me, what it takes is actually going and reading the U.S. Code, because when you actually read the code, you find out, hey, this is actually not this is not law. This is actually the blueprint for how to enslave. I mean, it's literally. All the stuff that you would think is unlawful is actually listed as lawful. It's either exempt from the law, or it's just there, sitting there. It's like an instruction book on how to control and how to harm. It's really frightening when you actually read the code.
Yeah, I always found it funny that the word lawful rhymes with the word awful.
Yeah. All right, folks, stay with us. My guest today, Vinny Eastwood of the Vinny Eastwood radio program. Welcome again, sir. So I guess
I'm having fun, by the way.
Wrap this up. Yeah, it's good times, man. You're always fun. You can't help it.
You know, I really can't. You know, I'm just relentlessly enjoyable. There's just no escape. You know, I can't turn it off. I was telling one of my listeners the other night, and it's like, I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry. I just entertain myself. You know, I'm a broadcaster. It's just all I do. You know, give me a microphone and I entertain myself for hours on end. You know, it's kind of like you give a child.
And hopefully somebody listens.
Yeah, I mean, see, me and a microphone is like a child in a Rubik's cube. You know, it just never ends.
Well, like I said, I mean, your catchphrase used to be was it the lighter side of genocide, or
yeah. Well, and there's a second part of that catchphrase is because in a world so full of chaos and madness, if you lose your sense of humour, you'll go friggin' nuts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, have you noticed it happens to a lot of us actually, Clint? Don't you think? Once you start looking into scumbaggery and terrifying things and horrible stuff and what have you, you start to lose your sense of humour, and then you start getting really rude and angry and bitter with people all the time, and you basically just turn into the very same evil that you wound up starting to fight against.
Yeah, it can happen. I've seen it happen, certainly. I've tried very hard not to let it affect it. Well, you know what it boils down to is I try very hard to not let it affect my false attempts to fit in at parties. You know what I mean? I mean, I still have to function in society somewhat, and unfortunately that means sometimes dumbing my own self down a little bit because no one wants to hear what
it's almost like I can't actually do that, you know. It's like if I'm going to go out partying and stuff like that, I'm either look, when people are under the influence, it doesn't matter what they're taking, whether they're stoned, drunk, tripping balls on ecstasy or acid or whatever, they're a hell of a lot more open to new ideas and more to the point, deep and meaningful discussions and things. And those are the kind of discussions that I like. Maybe because I've based my career on having these kind of things. In fact, that reminds me, when I was 19, a friend of mine criticised me. He said, "Vinny, you know what your problem is?" And I go, "What?" And he says, "You try to force good conversation on people." I was like, "My bad."
Yeah, I mean, you're basically cock blocking. I mean, that's right. You're interrupting the New World Order dating sequence, basically.
Yeah. Ignoramus interruptus.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god, that was really good. I'm going to keep using that. Ignoramus interruptus. In fact, that'd be a good name for a radio show, don't you think? You know.
Well, that is the radio. Have you come to the same sort of conclusion as I'm just curious? Because, you know, at first, I think everybody starts, when they start understanding some of the concepts and what's actually happening to them, how they're enslaved, all that, everybody wants to scream it from the rooftop. And basically everybody wants to scream it in a way that is towards a group as opposed to an individual. We're kind of hitting on this earlier. And what I've discovered is that does no good. I mean, it basically creates more ignorance because there is no one-to-one interaction. There's no heartfelt conversation when you're actually trying to explain. Like you say with your guests, you actually really try to, you know, hit it home with them. So, and I've really realized, especially lately, that there is no, you know, revolution. There is no group revolution. There's only revolution of the mind. Well, unfortunately, that's one mind at a time. And so,
which makes mass media almost irrelevant, doesn't it?
Well, it seems to. But I'm hoping to maybe, you know, people like you and me and others can change that and actually, you know, try. I don't know. It's a frustration, and yet, you know, all this technology and everything. It's both the culprit and possibly the savior of the mass mind melding.
Well, I think, what was it? In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. What's interesting is that we're in the land of the asleep and we're awake, and we're certainly not kings. That saying is BS, man. It's a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the land of the lies, the man who knows the truth is even worse. Is even worse off, you know, because at least he can't even enjoy the illusion of being happy.
Yeah, there is no being put back into the Matrix, is there?
I mean, I'm quite. I mean, the best that you can do is be able to live with yourself. You know, when I was a young kid, I was like, I think I was drinking on a Friday night. I think it might have been 17, 18 or something. You know, underage drinking is really cool. Kids do it. No, I'm kidding. And one of my friend's dads was dying of emphysema. He had like about 6 months to live. He said, you know, I'll just give you a piece of advice my dad gave me. As a man, you have to stare in the mirror every day and shave. Well, some of us don't because, you know, pretty unkempt. But if you can still look at yourself in the mirror and you're not disgusted by what you see, you're doing all right. I look at myself in the mirror and I go, whoa, there's this really awesome activist looking back at me, you know? Somebody who actually helps people who've had family members murdered by agents of the US government. Somebody who helps people who have been locked in mental institutions for saying 9/11 was an inside job. Somebody who gives a voice to these people who have experienced so much pain and suffering and nobody listens to them. And I feel very privileged to be the man that I see in that mirror.
That's a good point. I mean, you know, we joke around about being contemptuous, basically, to most of the public, but that's really not the case. I mean, it's really deep desire to bring people back to sanity and reality, and see what the heck's happening to them. When you see that someone is enslaved and they don't know it, it's very. Or when you see a whole population that is enslaved, it's a very disturbing thing. You can joke about it. We can call them names. We can call them sheeple. We can do all these things. But in reality, it's a deep-seated care, and that's the big difference. It really is. I mean, like I said, you'll probably tell a joke now, but it really does come from a empathetic place.
Yeah, and I do think that this is. I don't know. It's like holding hands with people who are falling off a cliff. You just get dragged down with them, and I think that's what happens when you get into this movement and you try to help people. In fact, here's another thing, and it's like layers of depression. So let's say there's 100 layers of depression and anxiety that you've got to get over in order to become a balanced truther. All right, just for the sake of argument. Firstly, you get into it and you go, "Wow, this person woke me up," and then you find out that person's actually a bit of a scumbag who's screwed over many people, and you're like, "Oh my god, I can't. What do I do now? You know, my heroes that I put up on a pedestal have fallen off of that pedestal that I put them on, and they've crushed me." And so that filters out a lot of people. A lot of people just get depressed and then just go, "Oh, the truth movement's completely corrupt and it's stupid and what have you, and I'm not going to participate in it anymore. So I'm going to go to my slave job. That's much better. You know, it's a way better idea. You know."
Stay a house slave.
You know, and so for the stronger of us, you get over that and you're like, "Oh my god, maybe it was a bad idea to put people up on pedestals in the first place. Maybe I should actually start doing stuff myself. Maybe I should have some self-respect and whatnot. That way I don't leave it all up to everybody else and take some individual responsibility." That
my
works.
God, this is heresy. Heresy, pure. Well, Vinny, always a pleasure to be in your most humble presence.
You know, actually, I've never been accused of being humble. I can't see what, you know. I don't know, like, I don't know. People lack a crisis in confidence. You know, Muhammad Ali was always talking about, "I'm the best you've ever seen, you know, I'm going to be dancing, you know." and Bruce Lee, the same thing, you know. Two guys, totally full of themselves, totally reckon they were the best at what they do, and totally frickin' were.
And the next thing you know, you're looking up from them from the mat.
Yeah, and see that's kind of me. It's actually a trait of what Thomas Sheridan calls benign narcissism. All right, narcissism's really, really bad because you love yourself and you don't really care about anybody else. But a benign narcissist loves themselves and cares about other people, and ironically believes in themselves enough to actually help those other people that they care about. It's a slight difference, but you know, I'll take what I can get.
Well, you know, to know him is to love him. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. We.
I was just talking with my mate Will Ryan over the break on Facebook, and we're hosting this big protest on. Like a permanently vigilant, incorruptible system. He said no. Corruption is a what was the word? A perennial thing. It just keeps growing and growing and growing all year round, and we're
starving on the streets. So, the concept of fixing an already corrupt system to me is a ridiculous one as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like when your computer's kind of frozen. You don't sit there and wait for it to unfreeze. You hit the reset button, don't you?
Sure.
Yeah. Just have to keep cutting it back. You know, your garden doesn't stay weed free because you sit on your ass and do nothing, does it?
No, exactly. We talk about this all the time. You know, you can't a system, especially as corrupt as the United States system, cannot be fixed. I mean, even Walter Burien and all his efforts, and we're going to be trying actually wrong and evil, and will be punished, which we don't have at the moment because everything seems to be legal. All he's doing is actually really harnessing the corruption to try to get the people to finally benefit from their own taxpayer money that they spend. Right now, there is no benefit. There is no tax benefit. I mean, it's just the bare minimum, people to really, really put those efforts into fruition here pretty soon. Even his efforts are only as good as taking the corruption and controlling it. I mean, that's really what he is trying to do, is literally to acknowledge the corruption, first of all, because no one wants to acknowledge it. Secondly, harness it, pass laws that say corruption is